problems 5 and 6 here, we're going to practice the same concept of quadratic formula. So I'm giving you all these example problems because they're all slightly different in terms of what your answer ends up being. So number 5, let's first get it set equal to 0. So what do we need to do to move the 2 over to the other side? If it's a positive 2, let's subtract 2 from both sides. So we have negative v squared plus 5v plus 6 equals 0. Now that the quadratic equation is in standard form, we can say that our a is equal to negative 1 here. Not just 1, we have a negative in front of the v squared. Our b is equal to 5, and our c is equal to 6. So let's remember our quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And we'll start plugging things in. So x equals negative b, so negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 5 squared, minus 4, times a, which is negative 1, times c, which is 6. All over 2a, so 2 times negative 1. Okay, if we want to simplify here, we can try simplifying our square root first. Remember, we always do that first because it's like an exponent and we care about our order of operations. So 5 squared is 25. Negative 4 times negative 1 is a positive 4. And 4 times 6 is 24. So we have 25 plus 24. So to simplify, we have x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 plus 24 is 49. All over 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. What is the square root of 49? That's one of our perfect squares. That's just 7, right? So we have x equals negative 5 plus or minus 7 all over negative 2. So we can break that up into our two answers. X equals negative 5 plus 7 over 2, and x equals negative 5 minus 7 over 2. Simplifying these, negative 5 plus 7 is 2 divided by 2, which is just a 1. Negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12. Oh, this is a negative 2 on the bottom. Look at me. So that would have made it a negative 1 on the top. Negative 12 over negative 2, which is a positive 6. So our answers here are x equals negative 1, positive 6. If you're confused how I got a negative 1, I had forgotten to put a negative on my denominator of negative 2. So negative 1 and positive 6 are our answers for problem 5. Alrighty, problem number 6. Let's go ahead and first, I hope you know what the first step is. Let's add 2 to both sides to get it equal to 0. So we have 2n squared minus 5n minus, negative 20 plus 2, that makes a negative 18, equals 0. Don't forget our quadratic formula. And let's label our a, b's, and c's. So a is the number in front of the n squared, so a is 2. B is the number in front of the n, so b is negative 5. And c is the number by itself, so c is 18. Okay, plugging in, we get x equals negative 5, because b is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4. Our a here is 2, that's a first. Our a is an actual number other than 1 or negative 1 over 2 times 2. Okay, so trying to simplify this, let's look at our square root first, just like we have been in all the other problems. So negative 5 squared, negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. Negative 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times negative 18, I don't know. So negative 8 times negative 18, 144. So we have 25 plus 144 in our radical. If we want to simplify this, a minus a negative becomes a positive, so we get x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 144 and 25 is 169 all over, and then 2 times 2 is 4. 169 might not be a number you have your perfect squares memorized for, but that is actually a perfect square. So the square root of 169 is 13. I know some of you might not have that memorized because maybe you only had to memorize up to 12. So we get x equals 5 plus or minus 13 all over 4. So let's break that into our two answers here. X equals 5 plus 13 over 4, and x equals 5 minus 13 over 4. 5 plus 13 is 18 over 4. Ooh, 18 doesn't, oh, I'm stuttering, sorry. 18 does not divide by 4 evenly. 18 divided by 4 is 4.5. So we might just want to simplify our fraction. You could write 4.5 if you want, but I'm going to ask that you keep it fractions or simplifying your, keep it in radical form instead of giving me decimals. So it is 4.5, but both of these are divisible by 2. If we're trying to simplify this fraction, 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 9 halves is how I'm going to write 4.5. I don't want you to write a mixed number as 4.5 because it can be very misleading that it's 4 times a half, which would only be 2. So one of our answers is 9 halves. 5 minus 13 is, what is that, negative 8? Yeah, negative 8 over 4. Negative 8 divided by 4 is negative 2. So our answers are 9 halves and negative 2. X equals 9 halves and negative 2. So don't think you have to get integers as your answers. Most of the time when you use the quadratic formula, you actually don't get integers. You don't get nice, pretty numbers. That's why you end up using the quadratic formula, because your other methods don't always give you those numbers that aren't so pretty. So as we move forward, you're going to see our answers are going to get more and more complex.